Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Perry Blackshear. He is the writer and director of They Look Like People and Siren. His latest film, When I Consume You, is currently out now on VOD. Welcome to the show, Perry.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. I cannot wait to talk to you about both your film and also the movie you picked. But before we do, let's take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
So I sort of started with horror quite late in life.
Okay.
I think that I sort of, when I was really young, everything kind of scared me. So I mostly stayed away from horror. I feel like, I don't know if this is true, but I think sometimes I think horror fans come in two varieties. One, they're kind of understimulated, so they need the kind of metal of horror to kind of make sense or something. And then the other, I just had a lot of nightmares all the time, very intense internal states. So it's sort of like, and then later in life, I discovered it and I was like, wow, this is sort of what it feels like inside.
Okay.
This somehow makes a little bit of sense. So it's sort of like, you know, and so when They Look Like People, it started as a drama, but then as I researched schizophrenia and all this stuff and brought in a bunch of my own nightmares, it started to get scarier and scarier. And I was like, this is really bringing a lot of my fears to life in a movie. And so that's sort of what I do now. And there was a huge, some turning points, but the biggest one was actually Mike Flanagan's Absentia.
Okay.
Which is, a lot of people haven't seen, but Mike's sort of my mentor, and I sold a show through his company, and I'd never seen a horror movie where I cared about the characters so much and it had so much heart, and it was still sort of so frightening at a deep kind of almost spiritual level. I guess The Exorcist did that to me too.
Oh yeah.
But I really saw the potential of horror as sort of this, like, I don't know, sort of a ritual thing where you get induced into kind of a nightmare with other people and you all have this nightmare together. And then you all come out of the other side gasping for air, like, oh, wow, we like touched the void and then came back again and are okay. Or not. I mean, some horror movies have fucked me up pretty bad. So I don't know
like
always
what?
if that works out like that.
Which movies have fucked you up? We love talking about them.
Oh, God. What's the one where they crucify the woman?
Martyrs.
I was like, which one? Terrible.
You're like, let me get on my list.
It's not a joke.
Martyrs is definitely boy. Yeah, it is a fucked up movie.
I sort of was shaking by the end of that one. So
Understandable.
I think I watched some like house building videos or something after that for a while as like a palate cleanser. I don't know. Do you guys have weird YouTube things you watch when you're like going to sleep?
Oh.
I feel like everyone has them.
I don't. It's either YouTube or it's falling asleep to Real Housewives or RuPaul's Drag Race. So
I fall asleep to 30 Rock. That is my go-to.
That's amazing.
I'm obsessed with that show, so I'll bring it up in any conversation I possibly can.
It is something about the pandemic made the comfort food of that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
I watch people building furniture sometimes.
It is so soothing. Like, I love TikTok. It's not the same thing as YouTube, but like TikToks of people just like with their hands cooking or making crafts or like crocheting. It's just like, I never thought ASMR affected me until I watched someone like do hand beating. And I was like, I feel like I'm getting a massage in my cerebellum. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's like when you grab a cat and then they kind of go like,
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I just remembered that I have started watching some videos on YouTube of people making these like dioramas out of like a whole scene,
like the resin dioramas.
Yeah, and then they end up pouring like the resin and making like underwater scenes and stuff. And there's the resin and there's like monsters in it. Like I found those and I'm just sitting there like, it's so comforting. It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so comforting.
We'll go back to horror in like 2 seconds. I know, but I love talking about weird YouTube videos. My fiance and I watched this one where this guy makes knives out of weird objects. So, like, he'll make it out of chocolate or, like, soap. And he makes these really sharp knives out of milk and all these, like, weird materials. It's really good.
What?
It's incredible.
What?
Anyway, changing the subject from milk knives back to horror movies.
Milk Knives is a great name for someone's band. Sounds like the battle of a band.
Oh my god! That needs to be a name.
But
awesome. Yes, back to horror.
You said you came to horror late, but do you remember what the first horror movie you ever saw was?
Oh my god. I think it was The Exorcist. I feel like that was the one that really stuck out.
Okay.
Because it was a prestige. You know what I mean? It was one of these forever movies that you kind of see. The other one that I remember vividly is Audition, because I was watching that. That was an early one too, and I saw that in college. You got the laser discs.
Oh,
and
yes.
I was watching a laser disc, and you had to check them out in the library. So I was watching it in a little TV screen in the computer lab, basically. But I remember just like,
it's a weird movie to watch
with my headphones on, just like freaking out, stamping my foot when the needles were going into the eyes and stuff. Everyone watching me must have been like, kitty. Is that dude having a seizure? Yeah. Oh my god. So I came into it all backwards. I watched, I didn't have the whole like 80s, like I never grew up on the kind of foundational horror classics. Mm-hmm. It was like way later. Like it was me through. It was like Eraserhead and Lynch and the kind of these disparate sort of things that were all that really made a big impact in different ways. God, yeah, Audition is like scarring as well. That would have been a good one here.
Wow, you really did jump into the deep end with Audition as one of the first horror movies you ever watched. Did you know what you were getting into when you watched it?
No, but I was very into not transgressive cinema, but I think, I love the surrealists and stuff. Yeah. I was like a college kid, I was like, I was like into Nietzsche and stuff. So I was like, what's the Nietzsche of, I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean? I was like into it.
But like in college, I was similar. Like, I want to watch all the weird shit and I want to be the cool. And I still am like that. Like, I will admit that I am still like that. But I was very similar to like wanting to find the weirdest thing to watch.
There may have been a little bit of that. Indie films weren't like cool, but I mean, maybe they were cool, but not at my school, I don't think. And so I was really into P.T. Anderson and, but I think watching the ones where, the kind of like, you have to watch this. I think, what was that one the French guy made with the scene with the fire extinguisher and the awful Monica Bellucci scene? And
Irreversible?
Yeah,
Irreversible.
I think I got some of the way through that and decided that this...
I've still not seen that one.
I can't can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it. I love rape revenge movies. It's a movie subgenre that I weirdly love, and I can't do. I can't do it.
Someone almost brought that on the show that one time. I can't remember who it was, but that was almost their choice.
I was like, I don't know if I could talk about that.
It was almost their choice, and I was like, oh my god, that would be a horrible movie to see too young, let alone
movie to see
now.
At
my age of 41.
Like, I don't want to watch that now.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe I just remember there was kids in this house, and they were like all being like, "Let's watch this movie. It's like really fucked up." And halfway through, they turn it off and just like wandered out, and they're like, "Do you guys not want to drink the rest of the night and just like talk about Care Bears or something?" These were college kids, and yeah. I mean, there was a lot, but it was extremely eclectic and odd, and I think I discovered horror through sort of echolocation around it rather than like all the slashers and all the stuff most people come of age on. So people tell me I have a lot of catching up to do with the classics basically.
So now that, you're an adult and you're watching a lot more of horror films, have there been some that have like really wowed you in the last, few years?
When They Look Like People came out, the idea of sort of, like horror as turning internal states inside out, like
the A24 kind of model you're talking, like with the elevated horror stuff.
Well, right, exactly. The elevated horror space, that I think was still, I didn't know that much about it, and it felt exciting, and there was It Follows, and there was the Babadook, and that there felt like this sort of like neo horror wave kind of thing was going on, and it was really exciting. And then Get Out came out, and it sort of, the lid came off. At least, I only see what's on the periphery of all this stuff, but I think have I watched anything really recently that excited me? I think the stuff that excites me now is people are still doing that allegorical horror and all these things, but even looking at the movie we'll discuss today, the movies that still talk about movies where their internal states made external, and you fight, like whatever you're fighting on the outside is what people fight on the inside. I love that stuff. I can't get enough of it. But someone was talking to me the other day about how it is really about sort of moral panic of suburban America or something. And like this ability of this, like the other under the surface of sort of Lynchian kind of normal life. And the stuff like that feels kind of eternal and evergreen about human nature and things like that. I love that stuff. Oh, I can say what it is. Midnight Mass, I think, is my favorite. I think it's my favorite TV show I've ever seen, and just feels like whatever the kind of horror I like to do, he is. It's like, it's like watching the Bach of that kind of horror go at, just like have an absolute blast. And
Midnight Mass is so good.
I love it so much.
I haven't cried that hard in a very long time at any kind of media. And I watched Midnight Mass, and I was just, my fiance walked in and was like, what happened? I'm like, I'm watching Midnight Mass. It's like after Katie Siegel's speech about death, and I was just like, it was a mess. So, thanks.
It goes straight to the bone, straight to the heart. Yeah. Oh man, I love it.
He's really good at doing that with his TV shows. Like that for me, that was Bly Manor. Bly Manor, like just
oh my god,
ripped my heart out and threw it across the room. It's like, yeah,
I love.
He does.
Well, and I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to transition to talking about your work, actually, Perry, because that's also something I liked about your work a lot. Is I see like I call it emotional horror, with like not the best way to describe it, but like horror movies that like do this really amazing job of imbuing like other. It's not just about being really scary, but also looking at like the human condition and things like that. And I feel like in all three of your films, when I consume you, the most recent, this the Siren and They Look Like People, that's kind of a common theme. So how do you kind of look at that and balance that in your scripts for your work?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I think the way I've described it, I described about sort of a collective nightmare. I think a lot of them start with my own nightmares or sort of, things people that I've loved have gone through, and sort of they emerge from that. To somehow, I was describing it because I made When I Consume You during a pretty dark time, and looking back on it now, I'm like, this makes sense. You know what I mean? And so movies, and in some ways, they're sort of like my colleagues and I talk about when you make a personal film, there's always this danger of doing a journal entry, which like no one wants to read a journal entry, let's be honest. I mean, you do, it's for you, you know what I mean?
Right.
But there's a difference between a journal entry and like a love letter. And a love letter is just as personal, but it's about a relationship and it's like for someone else, but it still has you inside of it. And so, you know, these movies sort of almost feel like, you know, love letters to what I went through and what some people have gone through that I love. And also kind of exorcisms, like by kind of getting it onto a screen and a film, you kind of like name it and kind of have a thing about it, you know, and sort of like this nightmare, you get to do it and live it. And then, you know, it's on a shelf somewhere and you can like do the next one or whatever, something like that. I do think that a very weird thing that happens is you make a movie thinking it's about one thing. Like they look like in my head, it was about the failure in your 20s where you think your life's going to be one way, but then it all falls apart and you have to sort of build up a new life, from scratch kind of. But then a friend saw it and they were like, oh, this is about masculinity and about how masculinity makes you insane.
Okay.
And I was like,
wow.
Geez. And I don't know if it's about that, but there's all sorts of things in there that you don't really recognize because you're kind of doing your best to transcribe your own dreams.
Yeah.
Knowing that people have to see it. So it can't just be a journal entry or whatever. And then, you know, other things kind of come out of that. That was a little bit discursive, but I think
cool.
The short answer is it's trying to be true to some experience that myself or people that I've loved have had. And that's sort of the beginning of it and then branching from there.
You kind of started mentioning about where When I Consume You came from. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what When I Consume You is about?
Yes, gladly. So When I Consume You is a sort of urban folktale about a brother and a sister who've had a rough life and have sort of been stalked by something their whole life. And they're really struggling to get by right now, but they're kind of doing better. And then this fucking scary ass thing comes back in their life and they have to kind of transform. They have to kind of go to extreme lengths to fight back against this sort of force that almost took them when they were younger and is now coming back. And one of them has always been the protector and one of them has always been the protectee, and that's the way it worked. But they're going to have to change drastically to be able to kind of survive. And it's a lot of sort of stalking the streets of New York late at night, trying to get revenge on the thing that really fucked you up and trying to make sense of it. What I love the most about it is it's this brother-sister story. These two people that have stood by each other and have saved each other multiple times, and how, you know, the only way to sort of defeat this thing is really like through family and through each other. And for me, what it's about, I don't know, you grow up and it's like you try to do good, and then the world's all fucking sort of monstrous. And you're like, yeah, but I got to be good, even if the world's monstrous. And then at a certain point, I think, and maybe everyone goes through this, I went through this, and at some point it's like the only way to fight a monstrous world is to get monstrous back. And what happens when that happens? And if you can kind of survive that with your own sort of soul intact.
Wow. It's also kind of hard to talk about your movie because something does happen that I would not want to spoil. But yes. I will just say that moment surprised me. And then the reverse of that also surprised me. And I love when a movie can do that and constantly keep me on my toes and think, what is actually going on here? So thank you. I love that part of it. And if you have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. It does have a few jackknives in there, which was exciting for us and a little bit. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it.
But also, I think the reason why this movie works so well is the chemistry between our two leads. But I also need to give a shout out to McLeod Andrews, who I've seen he's been in a number of your movies, but then he also, I remember him particularly from, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, A Ghost Waits, a movie that he stars
Adam's
in.
Movie, yep.
That I was like, oh, he's so good in it. And when he showed up in this movie and he's playing a very chaotic character, I was like, this is fantastic. And he brings such a powerful energy to the film.
Yeah, that was such a blast to have him. I mean, yeah, that was really, really exciting having him play that character, and like what it does to the film and what it did to the set when that sort of happened. Because McLeod is such a good actor, and he's also a little bit method. So
Okay.
I can tell you that like in between takes, he was still kind of like going, and after it was over, we had to be like, bro, like let's. No, but I'm glad you pointed out the chemistry. I mean, that was really what the whole movie was about, was these two people that had sort of held on to each other their whole life. And Libby was Evan's good friend, and they had acted together before, so that they worked together with the characters, and they spent a lot of time together. And they sort of lived as the characters a little bit.
Oh.
Only because they'd stay in costume and they'd be around Brooklyn sometimes, and the way people would kind of treat them. Like the way Evan was just always so kind of bowed and tiny and sort of apologetic for existing. Like he'd go to a bodega like that, and he said it was really strange. It was a really good experience, and yeah, working with the actors is one of my favorite parts of filmmaking. So
it sounds like it was a pretty intense set and experience for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, after one scene, because things in the movie touch things that happen to people we loved in our lives. And, there was a few scenes where we did a few takes and then we kind of stopped for the evening and just kind of relaxed a little bit. Yeah, it was a really intense experience, but we sort of shot it in order.
Oh,
okay.
So the experience of the set kind of mirrored the experience of the movie. And, by the end, again, can't spoil anything, but there's one scene in the street, very, very much towards the end. And shooting in the street in Brooklyn is extremely chaotic. There's partiers, there's all sorts of cops and all sorts, things going by. And it was a very challenging scene. But there was one of those moments that you live for as a filmmaker, where we were all pretty nervous about the scene, and we were all like, oh my God, are we going to be able to pull this off? Because it's kind of a big deal. And there were people partying and being like, what are you doing? And like coming back, that's how it goes when you're doing something small. And then we shot the first take, and I think that may have been the take we used. And we all just were like, oh, this is going to be so great. Like we were so at peace. And then we shot the rest of it out, and we were like, this is just the best thing ever. Yeah, it was quite an experience shooting it as well, definitely.
I can imagine. Because I was thinking you were talking. Mary Beth, you mentioned it must have been intense, and there's one scene in particular. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a scene where Evan's character Wilson breaks down, and that moment just like really. I was getting misty eyed. I was like, this is really like goosebump inducing stuff that's happening right here. And I was just really impressed at how authentic and grounded a lot of the performances were in this.
Yeah, thank you. I tried, something that I love is trying to get into the experience of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this has happened with you all, but when very large events like car crashes or something have happened in my life, like reality sort of shifts into a feeling of slight unreality, where like everything is sort of oddly calm and vivid and sort of flat. And you kind of feel like you're in a video game briefly, rather than connected to yourself and the world. And so I tried to capture some of that during a few sequences. And I don't know, I'm not smart enough to know if that's dissociation or what, but it felt like things that I've been through. So we tried to capture that. That was the scene where we did a few, and then we called it quits. Yeah.
I wondered because that definitely. I mean, the take you got was fantastic, because it gave me goosebumps, and I had to actually pause the movie for a moment. So it was very effective.
Oh, well, that's awesome. It's really good to work with actors you trust, who trust you, because you push them, but then they trust you to like not to, it's
walk
like
them back from the edge.
Right. It's like it can be kind of dangerous, but within like an arena where it's ultimately going to be okay. But like let them, go places where they don't necessarily want to go. I guess that's what horror is, unless it's yeah, awesome.
So we have talked about When I Consume You and your horror journey, but Perry, what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Oh my God, I brought Pinocchio.
You brought Pinocchio. So I'm going to read a quick synopsis and then we're going to jump right into why you brought this movie. If you are not familiar with Pinocchio, Pinocchio is a living puppet who has the help of a cricket as his conscience, and he must prove himself worthy to become a real boy.
What a loaded statement that is. But take us back. How old were you when you saw this? What about it terrified you? We want to hear how you saw it, where you saw it. Give us your horror story.
Oh, man. Well, I think I was like 6 or 7 when I saw it. And I was the kind of kid that, like, I had sort of had nightmares anyway. So about, like, many things. And I think that I watched it and was so utterly terrified that I just couldn't look away, I think. And I can talk about the scenes that did it, but I was looking at it again now. And I think the thing that made it so frightening at that age is that I was about the same age as Pinocchio. I mean, I guess a little older, but he really felt like a proxy for me. You know, and ultimately relatable kind of young little dude. And so, like, when he got taken away from his home, I mean, there is some dark stuff in this movie.
Good Lord, is
looking
there?
at it now. Like, so the scene where Stromboli was like, "You go back to your father, ha ha ha," and then like throws him in a cage. I mean, this is like child, like trafficking. And
Child trafficking for sure.
Turn you into firewood.
There's
and, like,
a lot of child trafficking in this movie. This movie is a very what? I didn't remember jack shit about that from when I was a kid.
So I mean, there's so much to talk about. But you know, so at the time, I think, you know, that scene scared the hell out of me, and then the whole Treasure Island, that scene. You know, there's a thing, nightmare fuel or whatever, and the example when you look up TV tropes of nightmare fuel, I think one of the examples they give is that one moment in Pinocchio where he says, like, they won't come back as boys, and like leans over with the eyes all crazy. Mm-hmm. And also the scene where the guy turns into a donkey and goes, "Ma, ma,"
baby's first
like
body
this.
horror.
And all the little boy donkeys be like, "I want to go back to my mother," and then there's like whipping them, and then they fucking get shipped out to God knows where, and then it's never solved. It's never there are still
never
child
solved.
trafficking, zombie turning into monsters running around. And there's also like these random Inhumans that they're like, "Close the gate, boys."
What
the
was that?
fuck are those things? Like,
I had to actually rewind and go, what are those things? Are they in robes? Are they
paused it.
like, what is going on
I did
here?
this and leaned in really close and I was like, I'm sorry. What is this? Is this a monster movie? Like, what the fuck? I know it's been a long time, but
So at the time, I think it like scared me straight, or I feel like it was the best like Dare advertisement ever at that age. Like,
okay, absolutely.
You know?
I was watching this now and I was like, okay, this is just a few steps removed from like Reefer Madness. Like, this is a propaganda film through and through in a way.
Yes. I was like, this is Pilgrim's Progress. They're like, always let your conscience be your guide or else you'll be child trafficked.
Don't go be an actor, stick in school, or else you're going to be sold as a slave. Like, basically, is what they're trying to get across here.
And like,
oh my God.
Dare we forget to mention the deep racism of this movie with Stromboli being labeled as...
Oh my God.
The caricatures are...
It's just terrible. And...
awful.
That whole time I was like, wow, this is a movie from the 1940s, because they call it, is it 1940 on the dot?
40. I actually looked it up because
it's 1940 on the dot.
I was trying to think of the context, which I can I mean, you guys probably know this too, but it's quite the context. Yeah.
Oh, we can definitely talk about that, because again, like,
let's dig into that.
The race in this movie.
I don't know. I guess Hitler invades France like 2 months after this movie comes out, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, it is, the Soviets were in Finland, I believe. Like, I mean, it was a insane time in the world, a dangerous time in the world. And that was something that stuck out to me in the film, is that this is this movie exists in a dangerous world.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, there's something deeply unsafe about it, where like you step outside your house and it's all terror, basically, like away from your father and the nice magical world here. And there's no good guys. There's no good authority anywhere. It's all just horror outside of your father and the world of your family, basically.
Yeah.
And how terrifying the world must have been at that time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was thinking, because I when I was watching this movie, I was kind of trying to figure out where it was set, and apparently it's set in Italy, and I mean that makes sense because the story is from an Italian writer, the original, so they probably set it there. But I will say that when you look at the main family of Pinocchio and Geppetto, they don't come across as foreign. They come across as American.
Definitely.
And then you have like all of these outside forces that are others. You have Stromboli, who is an Italian, who is speaking with, a Mario type, he's like, da, 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 and he's kidnapping the kid. And you have animals. And it's really, that's another thing that really kind of confused me as an adult, is the fact that we have people with pets that are animals. And then we also have anthropomorphic animals running around in this town. Yep. And I get it. They're from the book, and it makes sense in terms of like the book characters. But it's really weird to watch it, where it's like, what is going on in this world where you have like animals that act like animals? I mean, they have a little bit of human characters to it, as I'm sure Mary Beth will talk with Cleo. But it's we have like these animals that are animals, and then we have animals that are humans. But it's like the other. Everything outside of this little family unit is trying to tear apart their family. And so I kept thinking about how kind of xenophobic this movie actually kind of is, in terms of like this little household in the middle of all these other people from different countries trying to steal the kid.
Yep. Horrifying. You have the good little family, and then all the evils that are all everybody else, basically.
Just
that makes
outside
a lot
your
of sense.
door.
Yep. Right. Walking down the street, they're going to sell your reefer if you don't,
Your quiet Italian village, a weird cat and a fox are going to sell you drugs. And then your cricket conscience is going to bounce around saying, don't do drugs, kids. Anyway.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
But I mean, very, very weird to watch. Like, so many strange things watching it now.
Okay, but here's the strangest thing. And it's actually not, but I'm upset about Cleo the goldfish. Because Cleo the goldfish has big lips and eyelashes and is very, like, kind of like a sexy goldfish. And
she is a sexy goldfish.
For what reason? Why? Like, and this is a Disney problem. I feel like Disney has this problem with, like, fetishizing and, like, sexualizing, like, animal characters in a way that is very bizarre. And it's not, I know it has, like, no weight on the movie, but it just, for me, adds this other weird fucking element where this, like, goldfish has big old lips and, like, hides behind her fin.
And she blushes and uses her tail as, like, a fan.
And it's just very weird. It's just, like, so odd. And her and the cat kiss, and I don't know. It's just...
Yeah, there's all sorts of strange... It's like you're looking into the ids of animators. It's like when you see Heffalumps and Woozles, or the elephants on parade or something, and you're like, geez, what the fuck was going on with these guys?
What were they smoking? Talking about reefer madness.
But it's like someone was like, let's make the goldfish sexy, it's going to be great. And everyone's like,
let's make it a coquettish goldfish. Like, this sounds perfect.
And her name is Cleo, which I'm sorry, it's like kind of like an adult woman name, like Cleo. The cat's name is Figaro. I mean, come on. Like, we know what we're doing here, you fucking freaks.
Yeah, there's a lot of... I don't know exactly what was going on. I do remember, I think...
Also, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I was going to say that my first crush was Maid Marian from Robin Hood.
Okay. My first crush was Robin Hood.
See?
I'm just going to throw that out there.
So. I say fucking freaks knowing that full on I am one of the fucking freaks. But, like, for some reason, the difference between it being more like a man and less like an actual fox, like, I feel like there's a weird cognitive dissonance that I have there. But yes, Maid Marian was also a very attractive character. I agree with you.
But she was also that sort of like Lord of the Rings, like I fell in love with Arwen. You know what I mean? That kind of like courtly sort of, and same with Robin Hood, this kind of courtly love or whatever. It's not
Robin Hood. He was so handsome, and he was so like dashing and ready to go sweep her off her feet. I was like, yes, I like this. Why do I like this?
Justin the Rat too, from Rats of Nim. I mean, that boy.
Justin the Rat from Rats of Nim.
Anyway,
it's funny how these things, just get into the zeitgeist. Yep. Awesome.
But speaking of like when first watched this movie,
Terry? Speaking of what?
Speaking of what exactly?
Sexualized animals. No, I saw this movie very, very, very young. In fact, I don't really have a memory of not knowing this film. So I'm not sure exactly when my parents started showing it to me, but I do know that I was obsessed with it because when I was a kid, I would like watch a movie, and if I fell in love with it, I would be having it on repeat all the time, and it would drive my parents nuts. And I remember that because it's probably been 35 years since I've seen this movie. I had not seen it since I was a kid. But like watching it, all of a sudden, all of these nostalgic memories came flooding back to me. I remember when Pinocchio was first asking Geppetto, why? And then why? And then why? I did that to my parents all the time to the point that they were so fucking annoyed with me. And all I wanted him to say is like what I can't even remember what he said now, but I just wanted him to like finish the sentence. But I remember that. I remember being so enamored with Figaro, the cat, that I begged my parents to get us a black and white cat, and they did. And I named it Figaro.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Figaro didn't last very long. I don't know exactly what happened. My parents say that they left the garage door open and it ran away. I don't know what the story is, but it lasted maybe a couple months. But I had, for a very brief point in my time, a cat named Figaro. I wanted a fish bowl with a little castle in it and a fish named Cleo that would sleep in that fish bowl. I wanted that. Like all of these things are like coming flooding back to me. Like, oh my God, because I hadn't thought about this movie in, again, probably 35 years. It's just it's wild to me how a movie can just sort of burrow in there. And I was quoting it as I was watching it. I'm like, how am I quoting a movie that I have not seen since I was probably 6 or 7? Like, what the fuck?
I think those are such positive takeaways. I think my takeaways were more like when I saw Pinocchio with the cigar turning green. Having that like burned into my head like a nightmare image.
Oh, there was definitely nightmare images for me.
But it felt like it was mixed with the positive.
It absolutely was. But I remember fast forwarding through the Lampwick's changing scene into the donkey. I would fast forward through that, or I would hide behind my couch and put my hands over my ears because it terrified me so much when he, in particular scene where he like comes up on Pinocchio and his hands can do the werewolf into the hooves. And then there's the moment where he's trying to like, he's panicking, and all of a sudden he just starts braying like a donkey. Those moments was like an indelible moment for me that I was like, oh fuck, this is something horrifying. I shouldn't be seeing this.
Well, and it's
and
it's funny that you say that because I forgot. I only remembered really the whale sequence at the end, which is very different from the rest, which is so interesting because I had always thought of Pinocchio as like the whale movie. I never really thought much about like, I did not remember the Stromboli stuff except for like the I got no strings to hold me down. And I knew the donkey thing happened, but for some reason I thought the donkey stuff was just a prelude into the whales stuff. I think because as a little kid, I wanted to be a marine biologist, so I loved it because like
me too.
Like the scene with all of the cool crabs and the octopus and like the fish following them and the seahorses, I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. Like, and it's just something about whales and that whole thing stuck into my head. So that was what I remembered about this movie. And that's why I don't think I wasn't scared of the whale part. I just thought Pinocchio was the scariest fucker I've ever seen in my life. Like, I was legitimately, like, Pinocchio still makes me deeply uncomfortable. I don't like his little eyes. Something about him is so deeply uncanny and uncomfortable that, like, the news about the new Pinocchio coming out, I'm like, I can't handle Pinocchio. Like, Pinocchio as a puppet is just, like, I think I have a thing with dolls and puppets, I think, and it's just all weird. But I think it's his legs.
They are kind of like the
It's
ventriloquist dummies are very scary.
Yeah, and like it's specifically his legs because he looks so much like a human, and then you see his weird little knees, and you're like, wait, you're not a person. And just the thought of that happening to me is somehow the most terrifying experience I can think of. So Pinocchio just makes me deeply uncomfortable. Like, I want to punt him a little bit. Like, I do want to punt Pinocchio.
Mary Beth wants to punt Pinocchio. That's amazing.
He didn't do anything to me. He just makes me uncomfortable.
Well, it feels like he burrowed that image is like burrowed into your head. It's the uncanny valley stuff, I guess.
It is. I really think so because like this was not a Disney movie that I watch very often, and I think because he freaked me out so much as a kid, I was like, nope, I don't need this one. Like it's just something about it. And then watching it now, like even the beginning with all the cuckoo clocks, like, ooh, like what he's like, okay, well, number one, it's 9 p.m. and it's getting late. Meanwhile, like 9 p.m. is prime me being alive and getting things done time, which cracked me the fuck up. But like all these, there's like cuckoo clocks of a guy like trying to chop off a turkey's head, of someone shooting
so much violence,
shooting a bird, a woman spanking her kid. It's like, and they're close-ups, like they cut to these moments, and I was like, the vibes are already off at the beginning of this movie. Like something is just bizarre.
Yeah, there's something about, I think I realized this afterwards, is there's something inherently frightening about animation to me. Like, its very nature is frightening. And I think it has to do with how anything can happen at any time. Like, reality is not ever safe, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember watching Akira and that ending where, like, someone's brain just pops sort of out of nowhere. And it felt so frightening because it was so out of control. Like, it felt like an out of control world, like a dream or a nightmare that you never knew what could happen next in visually or sonically or anything. So it's like, it's interesting you said that like it just terrifies you, because I think I was talking to someone about this, but this idea that animation sometimes feels like a more accurate depiction of like dreams and fantasies than reality does. So like, even though it's fantasy, it's like emotionally accurate or something, or like in your brain, it looks like animation kind of.
Well, and because I love animation, and I think because it's able to do things with form that you can't do in reality. Like you can manipulate form to do whatever you want in animation, and you can really embody dreamlike movements and things that appear and how things move. And there's just like so much more freedom to capturing that in a way that feels so real, which sounds again like kind of like, you know, paradoxical, but it's true that the way that you're able to kind of eschew like our logic and what physics can do in our world, you can do something really cool with animation.
Yep. Totally like, unsafe, I guess, like uncontrollable and sort of unknowable in some ways. Yeah, definitely. God, the whale thing. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was at the body horror part with the donkey stuff. Like it doesn't, it's not real, but something about them popping up so quickly, it feels easier in animation. Like it's so much easier for those things to happen. It's not as out of the realm of possibility, which makes it feel even scarier.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how this movie is structured very weirdly. It almost feels like a couple like vignettes, right?
Yeah.
And I think ties in. I've not read the story that of Pinocchio, but I think it kind of ties into that as being more of like little almost short stories that were kind of told throughout time.
Yep.
Kind of put together. But I think this movie does a good job of kind of grounding everything in the safeness of Geppetto's home.
Absolutely.
Because the first bit of this movie is like all set completely in Geppetto's home, where there's a roaring fire and it's comfy, and the cat and the fish are getting along. Yeah, the cat is kind of bratty to the fish, but they obviously love each other. And Geppetto is this really kind old man that all he wants is having a kid, and he's given so much joy to everyone else. Like it feels warm and inviting. And I think the animation in this is just, it's so stunning. There's like a shot in the very beginning where it's a POV shot from from Jiminy's point of view as he's hopping towards Geppetto's house. And I don't know how they do it, but it's like you have like a front board of the house and everything on the inside is like getting closer. And I was like, that is such stunning animation, and it makes it feel grounded, I think, in humanity. So even if you're watching a cartoon, these feel like real people because they have so much character in it. And so we get this beginning part that is so warm and inviting and caring and carefree, and then he goes out into the real world, and I think that is where things start to get a little bit uncanny. Like all of a sudden you're walking down the street and there's a fox and a drunk cat coming down the street towards you, and it starts to slowly twist and become almost kind of a nightmare in a way.
Yeah.
Like a dream has turned into a nightmare.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I definitely, we talk, my colleagues and I talk about the handshake of a movie a lot, which is sort of like the first 3 minutes where the film or filmmaker's kind of like, here's what this is going to be. Here's what, so if you watch a Wong Kar-wai film, it's like, here's how it's going to be. Sexy and amazing and strange and beautiful. And and you're kind of like, okay, I'm like ready for this, and then the movie is usually, it's like a promise basically to the audience about what they're going to watch or something. Maybe. So at the promise,
it's like a wish upon a star.
Like exactly, like a wish upon a star. So this movie starts so warm. You're exactly right. That's something that it's 13 minutes of clocks and adorability and love and Care Bears and then this angel that comes down, and blesses everybody, and then loving and dancing the first 30 minutes almost.
Yeah.
So that when he comes back and the whole Geppetto's house is all ruined, you're like, oh, you killed.
It's devastating.
Like, Geppetto's my dad, and that's my house, and you killed it. You know what I mean? Like, it's very intense. The experience, I think, is so much more intense because it feels like a happy world, or you sort of thought you were in this happy world that was safe. Something like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moments of abject horror in this. The moment when Stromboli, who seems like a very caring, man, that he lets his anger through once in a while, but he comes across as like, oh yeah, I'm going to make you rich, I'm going to make you famous, and then he tosses him into a birdcage, locks it up, and there's the shot of the kind of the coach moving through town, and it's raining outside, and there's lightning, and there's thunder, and he's stuck in this cage and it's swinging, and there are like bodies of other marionettes. Yeah, they're marionettes, but it looks like bodies hanging from the ceiling. Just
of children specifically too. Like it looks like
children,
bodies
absolutely.
of children. Like it's very coded as in like, this man's a fucking child murderer. Like I mean, again, I've watched a lot of horror movies and I'm telegraphing that on there, but I mean, everyone in this movie, Stromboli, Honest John, the weird donkey man, like are so predatory towards children. But sorry, Terry, Jesus.
No, that's exactly it though. That's what I was hoping the conversation would go to, because these moments, there are moments of just absolute hopelessness.
Yep.
And it happens like a few times in this movie. There's this moment, and then we get the moments on Pleasure Island that feel completely devoid of any sort of happy ending.
Yep.
And the movie even ends with Pinocchio dying.
Oh my God,
like
Pinocchio
it's just
face down in the ocean. I was like, I forgot that this movie almost ends with just a drowned half man, half puppet.
A drowned boy. And
the only way he comes back to life is
fuck?
Like, wait, he died for your sins. He's like, Jesus Christ, the Christians have co-opted this fucking movie, I swear to God. Like, Jonah and the Whale, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's definitely Pilgrim's Progress, this film. And it felt, it's like, the way to live as a good boy. Otherwise, you'll be child trafficked.
Die for others or become child trafficked. You have no other options.
There are no other options.
I feel like, there's like everything I learned about life, I've learned about, the Pinocchio one would be real fucked up. It would be like everything I learned about life. If a fox coming at gives you drugs, say no.
But do listen to the homeless, like the unhoused coated cricket with weird holes in his shoes and a broken top end, who just shows up out of nowhere and is like, all right, like I'll be
and
your
is also horny for human women. Did you notice that?
This movie is also
Did you
very
notice
horny.
that?
There's a lot of butts in this movie. There's a lot of focus on butts.
Like
when Jiminy's leaning up against the one statue and he realizes it's a woman's rump,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Ooh, sorry, ma'am," or like. Yes, him even like looking at the can dancers and getting all blushing. Like there is so much horniness in this
bother
movie.
with the fairy.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, you know, and she's like, ha 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 ha, man, you know, and you're just like, geez.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't actually have a gender. Like, I'm a fairy. Like, I'm
a fairy angel. Like,
I transcend whatever weird shit your weird cricket brain is thinking. But
I know,
thanks.
and also you're a cricket. You know, like, I don't know.
Also, you're a cricket. I just love that, like, the end game for Jiminy is he shows up and he's a vagrant, you know, everything is all rumpled. When he becomes Pinocchio's conscience, his clothes magically, you know, fix itself, and by the end of the movie it's, ooh, I got rewarded with an 18-karat gold coin. Like that is like the progress here of like deferred gratification and then finally getting rewarded in the afterlife. That's a very, you know, Christian heaven, you know, delay gratification now, because in the afterlife, when you're dead, you're going to be in this magical, wonderful place. And see what happens is if you go pursue any instant gratification, you're going to be child kidnapped.
Yep, child kidnapped.
And trafficked.
Yep. And if you don't, you'll get a gold star and become a real human.
You become a real boy. You will transcend from your half puppet, half human.
Yeah, which is also sort of strange. It's like you are by nature an unhuman, but if you are pure of soul, you can earn a place as a human along with other humans. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a lot, but there's
no, but that is like the Christian way of thinking. Unless you're like baptized and confirmed in the church, you're not a real person. Like, you're not real in the eyes of the Lord. So like, it's not that far off from at least Catholicism.
I was just thinking about Miyazaki when I watched this movie and how like much I love Spirited Away and all these things. And in some ways, it's a pretty vague connection, but there is this like entering a dream world, and it's very deeply frightening in some ways. Spirited Away scared the shit out of me even when I watched it as a teenager. But if Spirited Away, it's just very free flowing and kind of like imaginative and all this kind of craziness. Pinocchio does feel a lot more linear and kind of like A to B, you know, and also everything is evil except like it's a lot stricter in some ways, sort of more,
because there's like not a lot of
the path is very narrow.
Yeah, it's like someone saying, okay, son, you're going to go out in the world, and there are going to be to the right and left of you a fox, and there's going to be a cat, and they're going to try to tempt you from going to school, from not going to school, and you got to just stick on that road and go straight to school and learn and not become an actor, which, by the way, I think is hilarious whenever a movie is bemoaning being an actor and like chiding you for wanting to be an actor, and it's an actor that is delivering the lines, always like makes me laugh. But it's such a straight and narrow line that it's very didactic in that way. It's like you're either going to go to school and be a good citizen of America, or you're going to fall into ruin, start smoking cigars, drinking beer, and destroying things, and become a jackass, and then get shipped off to the salt mines. Like, that is the ultimate, like, choice right here.
Oh,
be good or be shipped off to the salt mines.
Oh, God. It was pretty disturbing. I wonder if kids are just like, wow, that was a fun movie about a whale. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if it just sort of rolls off.
Apparently I was.
You know?
That was me.
I think I asked my mom, like, am I going to get taken away by evils in a birdcage? And she's like, no. It's like, what about, are you all going to get eaten by a whale? I think these were my main concerns. I think I was that young.
I do have a confession. When I was a kid, I kind of wanted to be eaten by a whale.
Wow.
This movie made it look kind of cool. I mean, yes, like now watching it, it's very.
Wait, like
you
in
get
like
a little
a
houseboat in there.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Terry, that's also
you get fish. Those fish look
vor.
delicious. I remember when he gets the fish, he was like, fish, and I was like, I want fish. I hated fish.
I know,
but
it was
wanted
exciting.
that
It's like,
yeah.
Look at all that fish. Look at all that fish coming in.
Yeah.
You have a little house. You're on a little boat. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I'm like, this is all like, I'm inside the belly of a fish. Like, this is all really. I mean, it was really cool. Now watching it, I'm like, God, this is another moment of pure desperation because Geppetto and the cat and the fish are like,
he's like, I'm gonna die here.
Yeah.
I never thought I was gonna end this way. And I'm like,
yeah.
Cat,
It's depressing.
Very morose. Yeah.
Very morose.
Yeah. Well, amazing. I am so impressed to hear that you actually had a cat. You like went full Pinocchio, like it was the full thing.
I did.
You
You know
went
what I mean?
full Pinocchio. Yeah, Terry went full
Yeah.
Pinocchio on this.
It was the
Wow.
real deal. That's quite a claim to fame. I didn't get nearly that far. It definitely scarred me, though. It absolutely scarred me.
I mean, yes. I mean, like I said, when I was watching the donkey scenes, I remember fast forwarding through it, or if I couldn't get to it in time, jumping behind my couch and sitting there with like my hands over my ears because the sounds of the braying were absolutely horrifying to me.
Yeah. Yep.
This movie also like did very poorly for Disney.
Really?
It's again because of the time period you brought up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like they couldn't release it overseas. It did. I can't remember exactly how bad it did. It kind of flopped for them, and then it was followed up by the flop of Fantasia, which also did really poorly for
And
them.
also had Sexy Fish.
Yes.
Oh, I don't even want to watch
correlation.
that. I don't even know what would happen if I watched that thing now. Like,
Fantasia is a straight up fucking nightmare. Anyway, this is not a
I
Fantasia.
remember it boring me as a kid.
me too. I remember being bored, I think, primarily, and confused.
I remember liking the Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence and the demon atop the mountain.
The
Mhm.
bald
but, like,
mountain
that's
thing, also scarring. Has anyone brought that in yet? Has Fantasia?
no.
That'll be a good one. That's
That will be a
someone's.
good one.
Yep. Amazing.
But it's interesting that we talk about this kind of being a propaganda film because Disney did turn to propaganda films in World War II because they almost were on the verge of bankruptcy, and so they started to they started to use their characters to like advertise for the army and for the military and whatnot, and kind of be more of that kind of again propaganda that I feel like this movie was a good stepping stone towards.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Wow.
It's wild.
Well, do we want to wrap up and give Pinocchio our rating out of 5?
What is the rating of the child? Say the rating again.
So our rating out of 5 today is how many babies first body horrors out of 5 do we give Pinocchio? So Terry, how many babies first body horrors out of 5 do you give Pinocchio?
This is hard for me because it's so wrapped up in nostalgia for me, and I kept reminiscing about childhood as I was watching this, because even though there are moments that are absolutely disturbing, and even though I find it a little too moralizing and a little too didactic and basic in terms of tackling the themes that it wanted to, I still have such fond memories of, again, the cat, and fond memories of wanting to be eaten by a whale.
Shouldn't be admitting that to people, Terry.
Okay, in one gulp, alive in a boat. Let's not introduce Vor into this, please and thank you. But yeah, so it's hard for me because I think this is a masterclass in animation. I'm surprised at how much life and character, and there's so many little moments, particularly in the beginning where like there's just a shot to Jiminy reacting to things. It's these little tiny moments that I think a lot of films just sort of bypass over. And they're interesting character beats, and it's beautifully animated. And the music, I mean, come on. When I Wish Upon a Star became the theme song for Disney, like the lasting legacy of this movie is large. And I also kept thinking I wanted to watch AI after I was done watching this, because AI is basically Pinocchio, and it kind of tackles that in a different way. But this movie is very important. I think it's absolutely stunning. I think the themes that it explores are a little too problematic in some ways, but I mean, I have to give this, I guess, 4 babies first body horrors out of 5 because it is such an important film, I think. But what about you, Mary Beth?
I agree with that. I think I didn't really have many memories of this film as a kid. I think because it was like, it freaked me out so much. I was just like, nope, no more of that, which I guess in and of itself is impressive for this movie. But rewatching it today and realizing just how deeply fucked up this movie is, I'm pretty impressed. Deeply upset by the racism of this movie, which is unfortunately present in so many early Disney films, which, product of its time, is still very gross. But really quite, it was very impressive in how serious and fucked up it is, but it does get knocked down a star for being so, weirdly religious and puritanical, very bizarre. This is a very weird movie to watch. It's just a very strange experience. Like, it's fucking weird. But Perry, you have the final word. How many babies for spotty horrors out of 5 do you give Pinocchio?
I would agree with 4. I think that was my number. I think that this, watching it again, it's like an epic. It feels, it goes big, and then it goes bigger, and then it goes, it felt like I sort of forgot where movies were whole experiences that, hit really deep and hard. And then I think it feels like it goes straight into the deep parts of the psyche. And I think that also there was so much love of craft in the film, and a really innovative film at the time, and a pretty fantastic journey. But also it is, I admit, it's pretty hard to watch now. So some parts of it, it's hard to just watch because of that's being a product of its time. So I think that's I would agree with 4 as well.
One last thing that just hit me, and because I was thinking about Figaro, it's a Disney movie in which the cat isn't evil.
Yeah,
there's not a lot.
Good.
Huh.
Aristocats, yes,
later.
But there's a lot of times where the cat is like the evil character.
It's true.
It's true.
Like, yeah, wow, they really are. And Figaro's such a cutie.
Such a cutie.
I
had to have a cat.
He's sort of a brat.
He is. I love that about him.
Can attest, most cats are brats. Love mine, but they're brats.
They are, yes. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much, Perry, for joining us to talk about Pinocchio. Where can our listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up that you can share and talk about?
Yes. You can go to whenIConsumeyou.com for updates on the film. I think we have a Twitter as well. I am not a specific social media person, but you can contact us through one of those avenues. This movie's coming out, and then there's a bunch of exciting things ahead. Can I talk about any of them? There's stuff in the TV world.
Okay.
I think in the movie world, there's a few going on that I can't talk about, that I'm super pumped about. But one that I can is about 2 people that stumble upon a cursed play.
Ooh.
Oh.
That sort of gives a big promise to them if they act it out.
Oh.
But then it gets not Cthulhu-y, but anyway, it gets real cosmic horror from there. And I'm very excited about that one. So that's something we're in development on that pumped about.
Hell
that
yeah,
one.
that sounds awesome.
That's amazing. Well, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Pinocchio? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time. Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.